The wagon wheels had stopped turning 3 days ago, leaving Katherine Ann and her dying mother stranded on a dusty Nevada trail 15 miles outside of Genoa in the summer of 1872. And if the tall cowboy with sun-weathered skin had not come riding up that fourth morning, they both would have perished under the merciless high desert sun. Katherine heard the hoofbeats before she saw him. She had been trying to get her mother to drink water from their nearly empty canteen, but Mama's fever had worsened overnight and she could barely open her lips. At 20 years old, Katherine had never felt so helpless, so utterly alone. Their wagon driver had abandoned them when Mama took sick, afraid of catching whatever illness had struck her down. He had taken the horses and left them with nothing but the broken-down wagon and enough supplies for maybe 2 more days. The rider appeared like a mirage at first, shimmering in the heat waves that rose from the parched earth. Katherine stood up from where she had been kneeling beside her mother in the shade of the wagon, her hand instinctively going to the small pistol her father had given her before he died 2 years ago. She had never fired it at a person, and she prayed she would not have to now. As the rider drew closer, Katherine could make out more details. He sat tall in the saddle, wearing a dark hat pulled low against the sun, a dusty brown vest over a faded blue shirt, and leather chaps that had seen plenty of hard use. A bandana was tied loosely around his neck, and she could see the glint of a rifle in the scabbard attached to his saddle. He rode with the easy confidence of a man who had spent most of his life on horseback. He slowed his horse to a walk as he approached, raising one hand in a gesture of peace. Katherine kept her hand near the pistol anyway. "Madam," he called out when he was close enough that he did not have to shout. His voice was deep and surprisingly gentle. "Looks like you might be in some trouble." Katherine's throat was so dry it took her a moment to find her voice. "Our driver left us. My mother is sick. Our wagon broke an axle." The cowboy dismounted in one smooth motion, keeping his hands visible. Now that he was closer, Katherine could see he was younger than she had first thought, maybe 25 or 26. He had a strong jaw covered in several days' worth of beard, and his eyes were a striking shade of blue-gray that stood out against his tanned face. "Name is Isaac Lane," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "I have a ranch about 8 miles northeast of here. Let me take a look at your mother." "I do not know you," Katherine said, her voice wavering despite her attempt to sound strong. "How do I know you mean us no harm?" Isaac paused, then nodded slowly. "You do not. But madam, with all due respect, you are stranded in the middle of nowhere with a sick woman and a broken wagon. I am offering help, and I am going to give it whether you trust me or not, because it is the right thing to do." Something in his straightforward manner made Katherine's shoulders sag with relief. She stepped aside and gestured toward the wagon. "She has been feverish for 3 days. I have been trying to keep her cool and get her to drink water, but she keeps getting worse." Isaac moved to the wagon and climbed up to look at Katherine's mother. The older woman lay on a pile of blankets, her face flushed and damp with sweat, her breathing shallow and rapid. Isaac placed a hand on her forehead, his expression growing serious. "She needs a doctor, and she needs to be somewhere cool and clean," he said, looking back at Katherine. "My ranch has a good well, and I can ride into Genoa for the doctor once we get her settled. It is not much, but it is better than leaving her out here." "Why would you do this for strangers?" Katherine asked, tears suddenly stinging her eyes. She had been trying so hard to be strong, to figure out what to do, but the relief of having someone else there, someone who seemed to know what to do, was overwhelming. Isaac looked at her for a long moment. "My mother died when I was 16, he said quietly. "She got sick, and my father and I could not do anything to help her. We were too far from town, and by the time we got her to a doctor, it was too late. I swore then that if I ever had the means to help someone, I would do it. No questions asked. Katherine felt something shift in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the desert heat. "Thank you," she whispered. Isaac got to work immediately. He fashioned a travois from some of the wood in the wagon and his own rope, creating a makeshift stretcher that he could attach to his horse. It took them the better part of an hour to get everything ready and to carefully move Catherine's mother onto the travois. The older woman moaned softly but did not wake. "Can you ride?" Isaac asked Katherine. She nodded. She had ridden horses since she was a child, though it had been a while. "Good. We will take it slow. It will be hard on your mother, but we need to get her out of this heat." Isaac helped Katherine gather what supplies they could carry, including her mother's medicine trunk and their personal belongings. He left his horse with the travois and took one of the horses that Katherine said had belonged to the wagon before the driver had left with the team. Actually, Katherine corrected herself. The driver had only taken 2 horses and left one, an older mare that had been limping slightly. "We will come back for the rest of your things once your mother is stable," Isaac promised. "Right now, we need to move." The journey to Isaac's ranch was one of the longest of Katherine's life. Every jolt and bump made her wince, worried about her mother. Isaac led his horse carefully, choosing the smoothest path he could find, constantly checking over his shoulder to make sure the travois was holding steady. Katherine rode behind on the old mare, which despite its limp managed to keep a steady pace. Isaac talked as they rode, perhaps sensing that Katherine needed the distraction. He told her about his ranch, the Double L, which he had built up over the past 5 years. He ran cattle mostly, with some horses. He had 3 ranch hands who helped him, and a woman from town who came out once a week to help with cooking and cleaning. "It is not fancy," he said, "but it is home. I have a good water source and the grazing land is decent. I have been working on building it up, saving money to expand the herd." "You run it alone?" Katherine asked, surprised. Most ranches she knew of were family operations or owned by wealthy men who hired managers. "More or less. I have help, like I said, but I own it outright. My father left me a little money when he passed, and I used it to buy the land. I have been working it ever since." Katherine felt a flicker of admiration. It could not be easy, building something from nothing out here in this harsh land. She looked at Isaac's broad shoulders, the way he sat his horse, the careful way he navigated the terrain to make the ride easier for her mother. He was clearly a man who knew what he was doing, who took his responsibilities seriously. The sun was past its zenith when they finally crested a rise and Katherine saw the ranch spread out below them. It was indeed not fancy, but it looked solid and well maintained. There was a main house built of wood and stone, a barn, a corral with several horses, and a few smaller outbuildings. She could see cattle grazing in the distance, and the whole property was bordered by a split-rail fence. "That is it," Isaac said, and Katherine thought she detected a note of pride in his voice. "Home." They made their way down to the ranch, and Isaac immediately began calling out orders. 3 men appeared from various directions. Isaac quickly explained the situation, and the men jumped into action without question. One helped Isaac carefully lift Katherine's mother from the travois, another took the horses to the barn, and the third ran to the house to prepare a room. Isaac carried Katherine's mother into the house himself, his strong arms holding her as gently as if she were made of glass. Katherine followed, her legs shaky from the long ride and the stress of the past few days. Inside, the house was simple but clean. There was a main room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen area, and several doors leading to what Katherine assumed were bedrooms. Isaac took her mother into one of the bedrooms, which was already being prepared by the ranch hand. Fresh sheets were being put on the bed, and the window was open to let in the slightly cooler air. "Get some fresh water from the well," Isaac instructed the ranch hand, whose name was Tom. "And bring some clean cloths. We need to get her fever down." Once Catherine's mother was settled in the bed, Isaac turned to Katherine. "I am going to ride to Genoa now for the doctor. Tom and the others will help you with anything you need. There is food in the kitchen, and you should eat something and drink plenty of water. You look like you are about to collapse yourself." Katherine wanted to protest, to say she was fine, but she knew he was right. She had barely eaten or slept in days, too worried about her mother. "Thank you," she said again, the words feeling inadequate. "I do not know how we will ever repay you." Isaac shook his head. "Do not worry about that now. Just take care of yourself so you can take care of your mother when she wakes up. I will be back as soon as I can." He was gone before Katherine could say anything else, leaving her standing in the unfamiliar bedroom with her unconscious mother and a ranch hand she did not know. Tom, a man of about 40 with a weathered face and kind eyes, smiled at her reassuringly. "Mr. Lane is a good man," he said. "He will get the doctor here fast as he can. You just rest easy and tend to your mama. Nobody is going to bother you here." Over the next few hours, Katherine did exactly that. She bathed her mother's face and arms with cool water, trying to bring down the fever. She managed to get a little water between her mother's lips. Tom brought her food, simple but hearty fare, and though Katherine did not think she could eat, she forced herself to have some bread and beef stew. She knew she needed to keep her strength up. As the sun began to set, painting the Nevada sky in shades of orange and purple, Katherine sat beside her mother's bed and let herself cry for the first time in days. She cried from relief, from exhaustion, from fear that her mother might not survive despite Isaac's help. She cried because they had been so close to dying out there on that trail, and because a stranger had saved them without asking for anything in return. She must have dozed off in the chair, because the next thing she knew, voices in the main room were waking her. She stood up quickly, disoriented for a moment before remembering where she was. Her mother was still asleep, her breathing still labored, but maybe, Katherine hoped, slightly easier than before. She opened the bedroom door and saw Isaac standing in the main room with an older man carrying a black medical bag. The doctor had arrived. "Miss Ann," the doctor said, moving toward her. He was a short, stout man with gray hair and spectacles. "I am Dr. Henderson from Genoa. Mr. Lane here tells me your mother is quite ill. May I see her?" Katherine stepped aside, letting the doctor pass. Isaac caught her eye and gave her a small, encouraging nod. He looked tired from his hard ride, dust covering his clothes, but his eyes were alert and concerned. "Can I get you anything?" he asked. "Water. Coffee. Coffee would be wonderful," Katherine admitted. She had not had any in days, and she needed something to help her stay awake. Isaac moved to the kitchen area and began working on the coffee pot. Katherine watched him for a moment, noting the efficient way he moved, clearly comfortable in his own space. Despite the circumstances, or maybe because of them, she found herself noticing things about him. The way his hair curled slightly at the nape of his neck, the strength in his hands, the gentle tone he used when he spoke. Dr. Henderson spent a long time examining Katherine's mother. When he finally emerged from the bedroom, his expression was serious but not entirely grim. "She has a severe fever, likely from an infection of some kind," he said. "But I believe with proper care, she has a good chance of recovery. The key is keeping her cool, getting fluids in her, and giving her the medicine I am going to leave with you. She needs complete rest for at least a week, maybe more." Katherine felt her knees go weak with relief. Isaac was suddenly there, his hand under her elbow steadying her. The warmth of his touch sent an unexpected jolt through her. "Thank you, doctor," she managed to say. "Thank you so much." "Thank Mr. Lane here," the doctor said with a smile. "He rode like the devil himself was chasing him to get me, and you are fortunate he found you when he did. Another day or two in that heat, and I am afraid the outcome would have been very different." After the doctor gave Katherine detailed instructions on caring for her mother and left a supply of medicine, Isaac insisted on seeing him out and paying him for his services. Katherine wanted to protest, to tell him that she and her mother would find a way to pay him back, but she was too tired and too grateful to argue. When Isaac came back inside, he found Katherine sitting at the rough-hewn table, her head in her hands. He poured her a cup of coffee and set it in front of her, then poured one for himself and sat down across from her. "Your mother is going to be all right," he said gently. The doctor seemed confident. "Because of you," Katherine said, looking up at him. In the lamplight, his eyes seemed to glow. "You saved our lives today, Mr. Lane." "Isaac," he said. "Please just call me Isaac, and I only did what anyone should do." "But not everyone would," Katherine said. "Most people would have kept riding, or would have demanded payment we cannot give." Isaac took a sip of his coffee, studying her over the rim of his cup. "What were you and your mother doing out there, if you do not mind my asking? Where were you headed?" Katherine wrapped her hands around her own cup, grateful for the warmth even though the evening was not particularly cold. "We were going to California," she said. "My father died 2 years ago back in Missouri. He left us with some money, but it ran out. We heard there were opportunities in California, places where a woman could find decent work. We joined up with a wagon train, but my mother got sick, and the wagon master said she could not continue with the group. He was afraid whatever she had might spread, so we hired a private driver to take us the rest of the way. But when Mama did not get better, when the fever got worse, he got scared and left us." Isaac's jaw tightened. "He left 2 women alone in the desert with no horses and a broken wagon." "He took the team but left the old mare," Katherine said. "I think he felt guilty, but not guilty enough to stay." "That man better hope I never cross paths with him," Isaac said, his voice low and hard. Katherine felt a little thrill at the protective tone in his voice, which surprised her. She had always been independent, had always taken care of herself and her mother since her father died. But there was something comforting about having someone else be angry on their behalf, someone strong enough to act on that anger if needed. "Well, you are safe now," Isaac continued, his voice softening again. "Both of you. You can stay here as long as you need, until your mother is well enough to travel again. We will figure out the rest after that." "We cannot impose on you like that," Katherine protested. "You have already done so much." "It is not an imposition," Isaac said firmly. "I have the space, and it is the right thing to do. Besides," he added with a slight smile that transformed his serious face, "it will be nice to have someone to cook for besides myself and the hands. Mrs. Perry only comes once a week, and we all get pretty tired of our own cooking by day 6. Katherine found herself smiling back despite everything. "I am a fairly good cook," she admitted. "It is the least I can do to help while we are here." "Then it is settled," Isaac said. He stood up, draining the last of his coffee. "You should try to get some rest. I will be in the next room if you need anything during the night. Tom is in the bunkhouse with the other hands, but I will be right here." He showed Katherine where everything was, gave her some clean clothes to change into since her own were filthy from days on the trail, and made sure she had everything she needed. Then he bid her good night and disappeared into his own room, leaving Katherine standing in the main room of the house, overwhelmed by the kindness of this stranger who had become their savior. That night, Katherine slept in fits and starts, getting up every hour or so to check on her mother, to give her water and medicine, to bathe her face with cool cloths. Each time she emerged from the bedroom, she saw lamplight under Isaac's door and heard the creak of floorboards, as if he too was restless, listening to make sure they were all right. By morning, her mother's fever had broken. Katherine was washing her mother's face when the older woman's eyes fluttered open for the first time in days. "Katie," she whispered, her voice hoarse and confused. "Where are we?" "We are safe, Mama," Katherine said, tears of relief streaming down her face. "We are at a ranch near Genoa. A man named Isaac Lane found us and brought us here. You have been very sick, but the doctor says you are going to be fine." Her mother looked around the unfamiliar room, her brow furrowed. "The wagon driver left us," Katherine said, her voice hardening. "But we are all right now. We are safe." There was a soft knock on the door, and Isaac poked his head in. His face lit up when he saw that Katherine's mother was awake. "Madam," he said, stepping into the room, "it is good to see you awake. You gave us quite a scare." Katherine's mother looked at him with confusion and wonder. "You saved us," she said. "My daughter told me. Thank you, young man, thank you so much." "No thanks needed," Isaac said with that gentle tone Katherine was coming to recognize. "I am just glad we found you in time. Now you need to rest and get your strength back. My housekeeper, Mrs. Perry, will be here today, and she is a much better nurse than any of us. She will make sure you have everything you need." Over the following days, a routine developed. Katherine's mother, whose name was Margaret Ann, slowly regained her strength. She was able to sit up, then to eat solid food, then to walk around the room with Katherine's help. Mrs. Perry, a bustling woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense manner and a warm heart, came to the ranch and took over much of Margaret's care, giving Katherine a chance to rest and recover from her own ordeal. Katherine found herself helping around the ranch. She cooked meals for Isaac and his men, learning to make hearty dishes in large quantities. She tended the vegetable garden behind the house, mended clothes, and did whatever else needed doing. She wanted to earn their keep, to not feel like they were charity cases, though Isaac never once made her feel that way. She also found herself spending more and more time talking with Isaac. In the evenings, after the day's work was done and her mother was settled for the night, Katherine would sit outside on the porch with Isaac, and they would talk about everything and nothing. He told her about his life, about losing his parents, about building the ranch from scratch. She told him about growing up in Missouri, about her father's death, about the dreams she and her mother had for a better life in California. "You still want to go to California?" Isaac asked her one evening about 2 weeks after they had arrived at the ranch. They were sitting on the porch steps, watching the sun set over the distant mountains. The air was finally cooling after another hot day, and Katherine could hear the soft sounds of the horses in the corral and the lowing of cattle in the distance. The question caught Katherine off guard. She had been so focused on her mother's recovery, on settling into life at the ranch, that she had not really thought about what came next. "I do not know," she said honestly. "I suppose we should. That was our plan, but—" "But what?" Isaac prompted gently. Katherine looked at him, at his strong profile silhouetted against the orange sky, and felt her heart do a little flip. Over the past 2 weeks, her feelings toward Isaac had shifted and grown. It was not just gratitude anymore, though she still felt an overwhelming amount of that. It was something deeper, something that made her pulse quicken when he walked into a room, something that made her look for excuses to be near him. "But I am not sure what we would do there," she said, which was true but not the whole truth. The whole truth was that she did not want to leave, did not want to say goodbye to this man who had saved them, who had been so kind, who made her feel safe and valued, and something else she was almost afraid to name. Isaac was quiet for a long moment. "You know," he said finally, his voice careful. "You and your mother are welcome to stay here, as long as you want. There is plenty of room, plenty of work, and I would be glad of the company." Catherine's heart leaped, but she tried to keep her voice steady. "We could not do that. People would talk. It would not be proper." "Mrs. Perry could move into the house," Isaac said, turning to look at her directly. "She is widowed and has been looking for a steadier situation anyway. With her here as a chaperone, there would be nothing improper about it. You could help her with the house and the cooking, and your mother could rest and recover for as long as she needs." "Why?" Katherine asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you do this for us?" Isaac held her gaze, and Katherine saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. "I think you know why," he said softly. Before Katherine could respond, the door opened behind them, and Margaret called out that she needed help getting back into bed. The moment was broken, but as Katherine stood and went inside, she felt Isaac's eyes on her, and her whole body felt warm in a way that had nothing to do with the Nevada heat. That night, as Katherine lay in her narrow bed in the room she had claimed as her own, she could not stop thinking about Isaac's words and the look in his eyes. She was not naive. She knew what was happening between them, could feel the pull, the attraction that seemed to grow stronger every day. But was it real, or was it just born of circumstance? Was she confusing gratitude with something deeper? In the morning, she woke to find that Isaac had left early to drive some cattle to a buyer in a nearby town. He would be gone for 2 days, Tom informed her, maybe 3 depending on how the negotiations went. Katherine was surprised by how much she missed him, how the house seemed emptier without his steady presence. She threw herself into work to distract herself, baking bread, doing laundry, helping Mrs. Perry preserve vegetables from the garden. Her mother continued to improve, growing stronger each day. She was able to walk outside now, to sit in the shade of the porch and enjoy the fresh air. "You like him," Margaret said to Katherine one afternoon when they were alone, shelling peas together on the porch. Katherine felt her cheeks flush. "Who? Do not play coy with me, Katie. Isaac Lane. You like him, and unless I am very much mistaken, he likes you too." Katherine's hands stilled in her work. "Is it that obvious?" "To a mother, yes," Margaret said with a gentle smile. "And I do not think it is a bad thing. He is a good man, Katie. Hard-working, honest kind. He saved our lives. And the way he looks at you when he thinks no one is watching." She trailed off, her smile widening. "But we barely know each other," Katherine protested. "And we owe him so much already. How can I know if what I feel is real or just gratitude?" "How do you feel when you are with him?" Margaret asked. Katherine thought about it. "Safe," she said finally. "And happy. And like I can be myself, not just the girl who has to be strong all the time, who has to figure everything out. When I am with him, I feel like I can breathe." "That sounds like more than gratitude to me," Margaret said. When Isaac returned 3 days later, dusty and tired but pleased with the price he had gotten for his cattle, Katherine was waiting on the porch. She had not meant to be, had tried to keep herself busy inside, but somehow she found herself there as the sun was setting, watching the road, and when she saw him riding up on his horse, her heart soared. He smiled when he saw her, a genuine, warm smile that lit up his whole face. "Miss me?" he called out as he dismounted. "The cooking has been much easier without you eating half of everything before it makes it to the table," Katherine shot back, but she was smiling too, could not seem to stop smiling. "Fair enough," Isaac said, walking up the steps to stand in front of her. He was close enough that she could see the dust on his clothes, smell the leather and horse and something that was just him. "How is your mother?" "Much better. She walked all the way to the barn and back today without getting tired." "That is wonderful news." Isaac hesitated, then said, I have been thinking while I was away about what we talked about before I left, about you and your mother staying. Catherine's pulse quickened. Oh, I meant what I said. I would like you to stay, both of you, for as long as you want. And Catherine, I need you to know that it is not just about being charitable or doing the right thing anymore. He paused, seeming to search for words. I have enjoyed having you here, more than I can say. These past few weeks have been the happiest I have been in a long time, and I hope that maybe you feel something similar. Catherine's breath caught. Here it was, the moment she had been simultaneously hoping for and dreading. Isaac, I do not want you to feel obligated. Obligated. Isaac repeated, and he laughed, though there was no humor in it. Catherine, I can barely think straight when you are in the room. I find myself making excuses to come back to the house during the day just to see you. I lie awake at night thinking about you. That is not obligation. That is. Well, I think you know what that is. Catherine felt like her heart might burst out of her chest. I feel it too, she whispered. I have been trying not to, trying to tell myself it is too soon, that it is just because you saved us. But Isaac, when you were gone these past few days, it was like part of me was missing. Isaac reached out slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away, and took her hand in his. His palm was rough, calloused from years of hard work, but his touch was gentle. Then stay, he said. Stay here with me. Let me court you properly the way you deserve. Let me show you that what we have is real. Catherine looked down at their joined hands, then back up at his face, at the hope and vulnerability she saw there. This strong, capable man was opening his heart to her, and she knew with sudden, absolute certainty that she wanted nothing more than to do the same. Yes, she said. Yes, we will stay. The smile that broke across Isaac's face was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. He squeezed her hand, then seemed to realize himself and took a step back, though he did not let go of her hand completely. I should clean up, he said. I am filthy from the trail. But Catherine, thank you. You have made me very happy. As he walked toward the barn to tend to his horse, Catherine stood on the porch and felt like she might float away with joy. Her mother appeared in the doorway behind her. I take it he made his intentions clear. Margaret asked with a knowing smile. He wants to court me, Catherine said, turning to her mother with shining eyes. Properly, and Mama, I said yes, we are going to stay. Margaret pulled her daughter into a hug. Good, she said. I have been praying you would. This is a good place, Katie. And he is a good man. I think we have finally found where we are supposed to be. Over the following weeks, Isaac did indeed court Catherine properly. Despite living under the same roof, with Mrs. Perry now installed as a permanent resident and chaperone, Isaac was always respectful of propriety. He took Catherine on rides around the property, showing her every corner of the land he had built his life on. He brought her flowers he picked from the wild blooms that grew in the foothills. He talked to her about his dreams for the future, for expanding the ranch, for building something lasting. They learned each other's habits and quirks. Catherine discovered that Isaac was an early riser who liked to watch the sunrise with a cup of coffee. She learned that he had a dry sense of humor that would catch her off guard and make her laugh. She learned that he was patient and thoughtful, that he never made a decision rashly, that he treated his ranch hands with respect and fairness. Isaac learned that Catherine sang when she cooked, unconscious little melodies that made him smile. He learned that she was fiercely protective of her mother, that she was smarter than most people gave her credit for, that she had a stubborn streak a mile wide. He learned that, when she was thinking hard about something, she bit her lower lip in a way that made him want to kiss her breathless. They had their first kiss 6 weeks after Catherine and her mother had come to the ranch. It was evening, and they were walking back from checking on a mare that had been showing signs of foaling soon. The sun had just set, painting the sky in shades of purple and pink, and the first stars were beginning to appear. "It is so beautiful here," Katherine said, looking up at the vast expanse of sky. "I never appreciated how many stars there were until I came west. In Missouri, there were too many trees, I think, but here you can see forever." "It is one of my favorite things about this place," Isaac agreed. "Sometimes when I cannot sleep, I come out and just look at the stars. It makes you feel small, but in a good way, like your problems are not as big as you think they are." Katherine looked at him, at the way the fading light played across his features, and felt a surge of affection so strong it almost hurt. "Isaac," she said softly. He turned to her, and whatever he saw in her face made his expression shift, deepen. "Katherine," he said, his voice rough. He took a step closer, and she tilted her face up to his. "I want you to kiss me," she said, surprising herself with her boldness. "Are you sure?" he asked, even as his hand came up to cup her cheek. "I have never been more sure of anything," she whispered. He kissed her then, soft and sweet at first, then deeper as she pressed closer to him. It was everything a first kiss should be, full of promise and passion and the beginning of something beautiful. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Katherine felt like she had been changed on some fundamental level. "I am in love with you," Isaac said, his forehead resting against hers. "I know it is fast. I know we have not known each other long, but Katherine, I love you. I think I started loving you the first moment I saw you standing there in the desert, trying to be brave even though you were terrified." "I love you too," Katherine said, tears of happiness streaming down her face. "I love you so much it scares me sometimes." They held each other under the darkening sky, and Katherine thought about how strange life was, how you could go from your darkest moment to your brightest in such a short time. 2 months ago, she had been certain she and her mother were going to die. Now she was standing in the arms of a man she loved, surrounded by the vast beauty of Nevada, feeling more alive than she ever had. When they finally walked back to the house, hand in hand, they found Margaret and Mrs. Perry sitting on the porch, clearly waiting for them. Both women took one look at their faces and smiled. "About time," Mrs. Perry said with satisfaction. "I expect there will be a wedding soon," Margaret added, her eyes twinkling. Isaac looked at Katherine, then back at the two older women. "If the lady will have me, then yes, there will be." "The lady will," Katherine said, squeezing his hand. They were married 6 weeks later in late October of 1872, when the worst of the summer heat had passed and the air had turned crisp and cool. It was a simple ceremony in the small church in Genoa, with Margaret, Mrs. Perry, Isaac's ranch hands, and a few friends from town in attendance. Dr. Henderson was there too, pleased to see that his patient had made a full recovery, and that something good had come from that desperate day in the desert. Katherine wore a dress that Mrs. Perry had helped her make, simple but elegant in a soft blue that matched Isaac's eyes. Isaac wore his best suit, his hair neatly trimmed, his boots polished. When he saw Katherine walking toward him down the aisle, his face transformed with such joy and love that several people in the small congregation had to wipe their eyes. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, and Katherine felt like she was in a dream, the good kind where everything feels right and perfect. When Isaac took her hand, his grip was strong and steady, grounding her in the reality of the moment. "I, Isaac Lane, take you, Katherine Ann, to be my lawfully wedded wife," he said when it came time for the vows, his voice clear and sure. "I promise to love you, cherish you, protect you, and honor you all the days of my life. You saved me just as much as I saved you, and I will spend every day showing you how grateful I am that I found you that day on the trail." Katherine's voice was thick with emotion when it was her turn. "I, Katherine Ann, take you, Isaac Lane, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, support you, stand by you, and build a life with you. You gave me hope when I had none, and you showed me what true kindness and love look like. I will treasure you always." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife and told Isaac he could kiss his bride, Isaac pulled Katherine close and kissed her with a tenderness and passion that made the small crowd cheer. Katherine kissed him back, pouring all her love and joy into it, and thought that she had never been happier. The celebration afterward was held at the ranch, with tables set up in the yard laden with food that Mrs. Perry and Margaret had spent days preparing. There was music and dancing, laughter and toasting. Isaac's ranch hands presented them with a beautifully carved headboard for their bed, which they admitted sheepishly they had been working on for weeks in secret. Dr. Henderson gave them a set of fine china. Mrs. Perry cried and said it was the happiest day she had seen in years. As the sun set and the party began to wind down, Isaac pulled Katherine aside. "Come with me," he said, taking her hand. "I want to show you something." He led her away from the house, toward a small rise that overlooked the ranch. From there, they could see the entire property spread out below them, the house and barn lit by lamplight, the corrals and pastures stretching into the gathering darkness. "This is all ours now," Isaac said, his arm around Katherine's waist. "Everything I have built, everything I am, I want to share it with you. I want to build a life here, raise a family, grow old together watching sunsets just like this." Katherine leaned into him, feeling his warmth, his strength. "I want that too," she said. "I want everything with you." That night, after all the guests had left and the house was quiet, Isaac carried Katherine over the threshold of their bedroom, the one that had been his alone but was now theirs together. He set her down gently, and she turned to face him, suddenly nervous despite everything. "I love you," Isaac said, cupping her face in his hands. "We will go as slow as you need. There is no rush. We have all the time in the world." But Katherine found that she did not want to go slow. She had spent too much of her life being cautious, being afraid. Now, with this man who had saved her life and won her heart, she wanted to embrace everything that life had to offer. "I love you too," she whispered, and pulled him down to kiss her. Their first night together as husband and wife was everything it should be, tender and passionate, awkward and perfect all at once. Isaac was patient and gentle, making sure Katherine felt safe and cherished. And when they finally fell asleep in each other's arms, Katherine thought that she had never felt so complete, so utterly and perfectly happy. The first months of their marriage were a time of adjustment and joy. Katherine settled fully into her role as mistress of the ranch, taking over the running of the household from Mrs. Perry, though the older woman stayed on to help. She learned the rhythms of ranch life, the endless cycle of work that came with raising cattle and horses. She learned which hands needed extra encouragement and which needed to be pushed harder. She learned to read the weather, to spot when a storm was coming, to plan meals for a house full of hungry men. Isaac marveled at how naturally she took to it all, how she seemed to know instinctively what needed to be done. With Katherine by his side, the ranch ran more smoothly than it ever had. The hands were happier with regular, well-cooked meals and someone to mend their clothes and tend to minor injuries. The house was cleaner, more organized, more of a home than it had ever been when Isaac lived there alone. But more than that, Isaac was happy in a way he had never imagined possible. He loved coming in from a long day of work to find Katherine waiting for him, loved talking over the day's events with her during dinner, loved falling asleep with her in his arms and waking up to her face on the pillow beside him. She was his partner in every sense of the word, and he thanked God every day for the chance encounter that had brought her into his life. Margaret thrived as well. Her health fully restored, she took over the management of the kitchen garden and the chickens, finding purpose and pleasure in her work. She loved watching her daughter bloom in her new life, loved seeing the happiness that radiated from Katherine and Isaac. She knew she would not live forever, but she was at peace knowing that Katherine was settled, loved, and cared for. Winter came to the Nevada high desert, bringing cold nights and occasional snow. The ranch slowed its pace, the cattle moved to lower pastures, the days shortened. But inside the ranch house, there was warmth and light and laughter. Katherine learned to love the quiet evenings by the fire, sitting with Isaac and her mother, reading or sewing or simply talking. She learned to appreciate the stark beauty of the winter landscape, the way the snow made everything clean and new. It was in February, 4 months after their wedding, that Katherine realized she was pregnant. At first, she was not sure, but when she missed her monthly courses for the second time and began feeling queasy in the mornings, she knew. The realization filled her with a complex mix of emotions, joy and fear and excitement all tangled together. She told her mother first, needing the advice and reassurance that only another woman could give. Margaret cried happy tears and hugged her daughter tightly. "A baby," she whispered. "Oh, Katie, how wonderful! You are going to be a mother." "I am terrified," Katherine admitted. "What if something goes wrong? What if I am not a good mother?" "You will be wonderful," Margaret assured her. "And you have me and Mrs. Perry and Isaac. You are not alone in this." Telling Isaac was harder, not because she thought he would be anything but thrilled, but because it made it real. They were sitting on the porch that evening, wrapped in blankets against the cold, watching the stars. Katherine had been trying to find the right words all day, but everything she came up with seemed inadequate. Finally, she just blurted it out. "Isaac, I am pregnant." For a moment he just stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then his face broke into the biggest smile she had ever seen. "Truly?" he asked, his voice full of wonder. "Truly," she confirmed and found herself smiling too, his joy infectious. Isaac let out a whoop of happiness and pulled her into his arms, careful even in his excitement. "A baby," he said. "Katherine, we are going to have a baby. This is the best news, the best thing that could have happened. You are happy then?" Katherine asked, though she could see the answer written all over his face. "Happy, I am over the moon. I am the luckiest man alive." He pulled back to look at her, his eyes suddenly serious. "Are you happy? Are you feeling all right? Do we need to get the doctor?" Katherine laughed at his sudden concern. "I am fine and I am happy too, and we do not need the doctor yet. Women have been doing this for thousands of years, remember." But Isaac insisted on having Dr. Henderson come out the next week, just to make sure everything was progressing as it should. The doctor examined Katherine and pronounced her in perfect health, predicting the baby would arrive sometime in late September or early October. As winter turned to spring and spring to summer, Katherine's belly grew. She had to let out her dresses, then make new ones altogether. Isaac was endlessly fascinated by the changes in her body, by the way the baby moved and kicked. He would spend long minutes with his hand on her belly, feeling the little life they had created together, his face full of wonder. "Boy or girl, do you think?" he asked one night as they lay in bed, his hand resting on her swollen abdomen. "Does it matter?" Katherine asked. "Not even a little," Isaac said. "As long as you are both healthy, I do not care one bit." Margaret knitted tiny clothes and blankets, her hands busy with happy work. Mrs. Perry cooked foods that would keep Katherine's strength up, clucking over her like a mother hen. The ranch hands, when they learned of the coming baby, went out of their way to make things easier for Katherine, taking over tasks she had been doing, insisting she rest more. But Katherine was not one to sit idle. Even as her pregnancy advanced, she kept busy with lighter tasks, kept the household running smoothly. She loved being pregnant, loved feeling the baby move inside her, loved the way Isaac looked at her with such tenderness and awe. She felt beautiful and powerful and more alive than ever. On a warm evening in late September, as the sun was setting and the air was finally cooling from the day's heat, Katherine felt the first contraction. She was in the kitchen preparing dinner, and suddenly a pain wrapped around her middle that took her breath away. When it passed, she calmly told Mrs. Perry that it was time and asked her to fetch Isaac. What followed was the longest night of Isaac's life. Mrs. Perry and Margaret took over, shooing Isaac out of the bedroom even though he wanted to stay with Katherine. "This is woman's work," Mrs. Perry said firmly. "You wait out here and we will call you when the baby comes." Isaac paced the main room like a caged animal, jumping at every sound from the bedroom. Tom and the other hands tried to distract him with cards and whiskey, but nothing helped. He could hear Katherine crying out occasionally, and it took all his willpower not to burst through that door. He had faced down ornery cattle, broken wild horses, survived harsh winters and scorching summers, but nothing had prepared him for the helpless terror of listening to the woman he loved in pain and being unable to do anything about it. It was just past dawn when he finally heard the sound he had been waiting for, a thin, wavering cry that was unmistakably a baby. He was on his feet instantly, and moments later, Margaret opened the door, her face streaked with happy tears. "Come meet your son," she said. Isaac entered the room on shaking legs. Katherine was propped up in bed, sweaty and exhausted but smiling, and in her arms was a tiny bundle wrapped in one of the blankets Margaret had knitted. Isaac approached slowly, hardly daring to breathe. "Isaac," Katherine said softly, "meet your son." Isaac looked down at the tiny face peeking out from the blanket, at the miniature features, the shock of dark hair, the little fists waving in the air. His son. His and Katherine's son. He felt something crack open in his chest, a flood of love so intense it almost brought him to his knees. "He is perfect," Isaac whispered. "Katherine, he is absolutely perfect, and you are amazing. I love you so much." Katherine smiled, tired but radiant. "What should we name him?" They had discussed names during the pregnancy but never settled on anything definite. Now, looking at his newborn son, Isaac said, "What about James, James Lane? It was my grandfather's name. He was a good man, a strong man." "James," Katherine repeated, testing it out. "Yes, I like that. James Isaac Lane." "James Isaac," Isaac repeated, touched that she wanted to include his name. "Of course," Katherine said. "I want him to grow up to be just like his father." Over the next weeks and months, Katherine and Isaac settled into their new roles as parents. James was a good baby, healthy and strong, with lungs that could wake the entire household when he was hungry. Isaac was a devoted father, involved in every aspect of his son's care in a way that was unusual for the time. He changed diapers, walked the floor with James when he was fussy, sang to him in his deep, slightly off-key voice. Katherine loved watching Isaac with their son, loved seeing this strong, tough cowboy turn into mush when James wrapped his tiny hand around Isaac's finger. She had known Isaac was a good man, but seeing him as a father confirmed what she had always suspected, that he was capable of infinite gentleness and love. The ranch continued to prosper. With the money from a particularly good cattle sale, Isaac was able to buy more land, expanding their holdings. He hired another hand, a young man named Peter who had recently come west looking for work. The herd grew, as did Isaac's reputation as a fair and honest rancher. When James was a year old, Katherine discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the news was met with excited anticipation rather than nervous fear. James had been such a joy that they were both eager to add to their family. "Maybe a girl this time," Isaac said hopefully. "A little girl who looks just like her beautiful mother." But when the baby was born the following summer, in July of 1874, it was another boy. They named him Daniel, and he looked so much like James that it was almost comical. "We make handsome boys," Isaac said proudly as he held his newborn second son. "We certainly do," Katherine agreed. Margaret doted on her grandsons, spending hours playing with James and rocking baby Daniel. She was getting older, slowing down some, but the babies seemed to give her new life. "I am so glad I lived to see this," she told Katherine one day. "To see you so happy to know these beautiful boys. It is more than I ever dared hope for when we were stranded out there in the desert." "We have been blessed," Katherine agreed. "So incredibly blessed." Life on the ranch was busy but fulfilling. The boys grew, turning from babies to toddlers. James learned to walk and then to run, always getting into something, always curious. Daniel was quieter but just as mischievous, following his older brother everywhere. Isaac built them toy horses, taught them to be gentle with animals, carried them on his shoulders as he did his rounds of the property. Katherine sometimes thought back to that desperate day on the trail, when she had thought all was lost. If someone had told her then that in just a few short years she would be here, happy and loved, with a wonderful husband and 2 beautiful children, she would not have believed it. But here she was, living a life that exceeded her wildest dreams. When James was 3 and Daniel was almost 2, tragedy struck. Margaret, who had been feeling poorly for a few weeks, passed away peacefully in her sleep one autumn night. Katherine was devastated, though she took some comfort in knowing her mother had died happy, surrounded by love, having seen her daughter settled and thriving. They buried Margaret on a hillside overlooking the ranch, in a spot where wildflowers grew in the spring. Isaac held Katherine as she cried, the boys pressed between them, too young to fully understand but sensing their mother's grief. "She loved you so much," Isaac told Katherine, "and she was so proud of you, of the life you built, of the mother you became." "I wish she could have had more time with the boys," Katherine said through her tears. "She had enough time to know them, to love them," Isaac said gently. "And they will know her through the stories we tell them, through the love she showed us all." The loss of her mother left a hole in Katherine's heart, but she had Isaac and the boys to focus on, and gradually the sharp pain of grief dulled to a bittersweet ache. She threw herself into life on the ranch, into raising her sons, into being the best wife and mother she could be. When James was 5 and Daniel was 4, Katherine gave birth to their 3rd child, and this time it was the daughter Isaac had been hoping for. They named her Margaret Ann after Katherine's mother, and from the moment she was born, with her rosebud mouth and dark curls, she had her father wrapped around her little finger. "I am outnumbered now," Isaac joked as he cradled his tiny daughter, 3 against 1. "You love it," Katherine said, smiling. "I do," he admitted. "I really do." Little Maggie, as they called her, was a happy, sunny child who brought light into every room. James and Daniel were protective of their baby sister, always making sure she had what she needed, already learning the responsibilities of being big brothers. Isaac was ridiculously soft when it came to his daughter, letting her climb all over him, reading her stories, carrying her everywhere. As the years passed, the ranch continued to grow and thrive. Isaac's hard work and Katherine's careful management paid off in prosperity and success. They were able to build a larger house to accommodate their growing family, with separate bedrooms for the boys and for Maggie, a proper dining room, and even a small library that Katherine filled with books ordered from catalogs. The children grew healthy and strong. James, the eldest, showed an early aptitude for ranching, following his father everywhere, eager to learn. Daniel was more contemplative, interested in books and drawing, though he could ride and rope as well as any of the hands. Maggie was fearless, climbing trees and riding horses almost as soon as she could walk, keeping her parents and brothers constantly on their toes. On quiet evenings when the children were in bed and the house was peaceful, Katherine and Isaac would sit together on the porch they had expanded, holding hands and watching the stars. "Do you ever think about that day?" Isaac asked once. "The day I found you?" "All the time," Katherine admitted. "It is strange to think that the worst day of my life led to the best things in my life. If we had not been abandoned, if you had not found us, none of this would exist. These children, this life, us." "I think fate brought us together," Isaac said. "I think you were always meant to be mine, and I was always meant to be yours. We just had to find each other." Katherine leaned her head on his shoulder. "I am so grateful," she said. "For you, for this life, for everything we have built together. You saved me, Isaac. In every way a person can be saved. And you saved me right back," Isaac said, kissing the top of her head. "You made me believe in love, in family, in the possibility of real happiness. Before you, I was just surviving, getting through each day. With you, I am living." As the children grew older, they each found their own paths. James did indeed become a rancher, working alongside his father and eventually taking over more and more of the day-to-day operations of the ranch. At 20, he married a girl from town, a sweet-natured young woman named Sarah, and they moved into a house Isaac built for them on the property. Within a year, they had made Isaac and Katherine grandparents, a development that delighted them both. Daniel, true to his nature, became a teacher. He moved to Genoa and started a school, teaching the children of ranchers and townspeople alike. He too married, a schoolteacher from California, and they had a house full of bookish children who visited the ranch often. Maggie, their wild, beautiful daughter, shocked everyone by falling in love with a traveling photographer who came through Genoa documenting life in the West. After a brief but intense courtship, she married him and traveled with him for several years before they settled in San Francisco. She wrote long letters to her parents, describing the wonders she saw, and visited as often as she could through it all, through the years and the changes, through the joys and the sorrows. Isaac and Katherine remained each other's constants. Their love, which had begun in such dramatic circumstances, only grew deeper and stronger with time. They worked together, laughed together, faced challenges together. They grew old together, watching their children become adults, watching their grandchildren grow. On their 25th wedding anniversary, their children threw them a party at the ranch. The house and yard were filled with people, children and grandchildren, neighbors and friends, ranch hands past and present. There was music and dancing, food and laughter. At one point, Isaac pulled Katherine aside, leading her away from the crowd to the rise where they had stood on their wedding day. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant colors, and the ranch spread out below them looked peaceful and prosperous. 25 years, Isaac said, his arm around Katherine's waist. "Sometimes it feels like yesterday, sometimes it feels like forever, but I would not change a single moment of it." Katherine, her hair now streaked with gray but her eyes still bright, looked up at him. "Not even the hard times. The year the drought almost ruined us. When Daniel broke his leg and we thought he might never walk right again. When Maggie ran off with that photographer and we were so worried. Not even those," Isaac said firmly. "Because we got through them together and they made the good times even sweeter. Katherine, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. Loving you, building this life with you has been my greatest adventure and my greatest joy." "You old romantic," Katherine said, but she was smiling, tears shining in her eyes. I love you too, Isaac Lane, today, tomorrow, and always. He kissed her then, in the fading light, as they had kissed so many times over the past quarter century. Below them, someone called out for them to come back to the party, and they laughed and started down the hill, hand in hand, ready to celebrate with the family and community they had built together. Years continued to pass. Isaac and Katherine grew old, their hair fully gray now, their faces lined with years of laughter and sun. They slowed down, handing over more of the ranch operations to James and his growing family. They spent their days in the comfortable rhythms of a long married couple, finishing each other's sentences, communicating with just a look. They watched their grandchildren grow and start families of their own, making them great-grandparents. The ranch land that Isaac had bought so many years ago was now a thriving multi-generational operation, with James's sons taking on more responsibility, with cattle that numbered in the hundreds, with a reputation that extended throughout Nevada and beyond. On a warm summer evening in 1905, 33 years after they had met, Isaac and Katherine sat on their porch as they had done thousands of times before. They were both in their 70s now, still healthy but feeling the weight of their years. The sun was setting in that spectacular way it always did over the Nevada desert, the sky a riot of color. "It has been a good life," Isaac said, his hand finding Katherine's as naturally as breathing. "The best," Katherine agreed. "Better than I ever imagined possible when I was that scared girl stranded in the desert." "I am glad I found you that day," Isaac said. "It was the beginning of everything good in my life." Katherine squeezed his hand. "We found each other," she corrected gently. "And we built something beautiful together. A family, a legacy, a love that will last beyond us." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun sank lower, the shadows growing long, the air beginning to cool. Inside the house, they could hear the sounds of their family, James and Sarah who had come for dinner, several of the grandchildren who were visiting. The sound of laughter, of life, of love continuing. "No regrets?" Isaac asked, as he sometimes did. "Not a single one," Katherine said, as she always answered. "You?" "Only that I will not get to spend another lifetime with you," Isaac said. "One is not enough." "Then we will have to make every moment of this one count," Katherine said. They watched the last of the sun disappear below the horizon, the sky turning from orange to purple to deep blue, the first stars beginning to appear. And in that moment, surrounded by the land they loved, the family they had created and the life they had built together, they were completely, perfectly content. The Double L Ranch continued to thrive for generations, a testament to the love story that had started it all. The tale of how Isaac Lane had found Katherine and her dying mother stranded in the desert, of how he had taken them in without question, of how that act of kindness had bloomed into a love that lasted a lifetime, became part of the ranch's legend. Parents told it to their children, grandparents to grandchildren, each generation adding their own details, but always coming back to the essential truth of it. That sometimes, in the harshest of circumstances, in the most unlikely of places, you can find exactly what you have been looking for all along. That kindness can change everything. That love, real love, the kind that lasts, can begin in a single moment and carry you through an entire lifetime. Isaac and Katherine Lane had found all of that and more, and they had built a legacy that would last long after they were gone. Their names were carved together on a shared headstone on the hillside where Margaret was buried, where wildflowers still bloomed every spring. But their real monument was the ranch itself, the family that carried their blood, the love story that inspired generations. And if you visit the Double L Ranch even today, on a quiet evening when the sun is setting and the air is still. Some say you can still feel them there. Isaac and Katherine, watching over the land they loved, together as they always were, as they always would be, forever and always.